Hello class. In this example, I want to solve x squared times y double prime minus xy prime plus y is equal to the natural log of x. So in doing so for this, we need a substitution involving this. So let me start writing that up here. We're going to let x be e to the t power, which means to solve for t, we need to take the natural log of both sides, the natural log of x. And we know from this that we need to take, two derivatives involved in this. So I'll do the first one here, dy over dx. Since we're moving x into a function involving t, we need to use the chain rule here, dy over dt times dt over dx. This is a y. There we go. So, in doing so, this would be for that derivative of y with respect to t. We don't know what that particular value is, so we need to leave that there. But derivative of t with respect to x. That's the derivative of this natural log of x, which will just be 1 over x. And again, times that dy over dt. So for the second derivative of y with respect to x, this is going to make 1 over x times the derivative with respect to x of dy over dt. Plus the derivative of y with respect to t times negative 1 over x squared due to applying that product rule. So doing this is going to give us, when we simplify this further, to be 1 over x times this second derivative of y with respect to t minus 1 over x plus the derivative of y with respect to t times negative 1 over x squared. And that's going to simplify down to be 1 over x squared times the second derivative of y with respect to t minus dy over dt. So we need to do a substitution for this. Let me balance that out. There we go. We're going to use for a substitution dy, the second derivative of y with respect to t, minus 2 times dy over dt plus y is supposed to be equal to t once we substitute everything into our differential equation. So in doing so, we can write our auxiliary equation. Auxiliary equation is going to be m squared minus 2m plus 1. And that's going to give us m minus 1 squared is equal to 0. So the complementary solution we're going to get from this is going to be c sub 1 times e to the t plus c sub 2 times t times e to the t. And we're going to apply the our undetermined coefficients for this for us to actually find a particular solution, which means we're going to guess y sub p to be in the form of a plus b times t. So in doing this, we would get, when applying this into a differential equation, negative 2b plus a plus b t would be equal to t. And we take our derivatives and apply them in. This gives us a value for a to be 2 and a value for b to be 1 in order for this to solve our differential equation. So, in doing so, for our complete solution for this makes c sub 1 times e to the t plus c sub 2 times t e to the t plus 2 plus t. But we had a substitution to begin with, right? So, reapplying that substitution would give us our complete equation back to a variable involving x. This would be c sub 1 times x plus c sub 2 times x times the natural log of x plus 2 plus the natural log of x. And this came from the fact that e to the t was equal to x and t is equal to the natural log of x. And just to point out, this is assuming our interval was from this was from 0 to infinity. So let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you.